Okay, guys, in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make $8 million. And this is not some clickbait title, just to show you I know what I'm talking about. Here is one of it's a tracker sheet, basically, to track how much we made one of our clients. As you can see here, the sum is $8 million. I've just blurred out some names and emails for privacy reasons, obviously, but this is basically how much we made this client, I think, over the course of just under 2 years, right? So yeah, $8 million. So in this video, I want to teach you everything I learned, how we did this, and at its peak, this business got to around 2 million a month almost. And that's just on the front end, right? So they have a back end where they have recurring revenue and they do profit splits with clients. So this business was probably doing, I don't know the exact numbers, but probably north of $20 million over the course of the last year. And then before that, a little bit less, right? So these guys were doing $2 million a month. And one thing to note about this is that it's a very high margin business, as we'll talk about later. But you hear these e-com gurus like, oh, I did 2 million a month, I did $1 million a month. But what they won't tell you is that 500,000 of that million was probably ad spend, right? And then that's not even counting cost of goods sold and all these other expenses that they have. So true net that they're probably doing is around 200, 300,000 a month off of $1 million in revenue. That's being generous. 30% margins are really good for e-com. And then, on top of that, when you're running $1 million or $2 million a month, right? You have an 8-figure operation. That is, that's a headache and a half. And to only net 300,000, I don't know if that's really that worth it, right? So if you want to make lots of money and you want to keep lots of money, this is the video for you. So let's get into it. 8 million, how to make $8 million a month. So here's how to make $8 million and, make a couple $1 million a month. So I'm going to show you, how we did this. And the first thing you have to understand is the attention economy, right? So you probably heard about this. There's a trend in business growth right now. And the trend is that attention has become a commodity, right? It's now commoditized. What does that mean? It means we're in an economy now where everybody's on these large social networks, and these social networks are monetizing their attention, selling them to advertisers to make money. And so when attention becomes a commodity, you can predict it using economic theory, right? When there's a commodity, when the demand for a commodity is high and it increases and the supply is limited, right? There's only so much attention, and the costs rise. And you can see this happening with CPMs, right? So you can think about these advertising platforms as effectively hubs of attention and as mechanisms that quantify attention as well, right? So you can see that because the demand for attention is going up and the supply is being restricted, then we have this increasing rise in CPM that's been happening for the last decade or so. You can see these are the stats, right? Facebook went up by 89%, TikTok 92%, Snapchat 64%. And this is a graph that just goes all the way up, and it will continue to go up as more and more businesses shift towards digital and as attention becomes more and more scarce. So that brings me to my first point. In order to make $8 million with fat profit margins, you need to have sustainable unit economics. What does that mean, right? This sounds like a bunch of business jargon. Well, simply, it just means that when the business growth relies on acquiring customers for less than their lifetime value, rising costs are a challenge, right? So think about business growth as this, right? You basically have to get a customer. To buy a customer, their lifetime value has to be less than the cost for which we purchased them for. And in a world where costs are going up, right, the attention costs are going up, that margin becomes slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. There are only 2 effective business models that I've seen that consistently produce 8 and 9-figure companies in this rising cost environment, right? Back to that e-com example, you don't want a business that's doing $2 million a month, but you're netting almost nothing, right? And so the only way to make it work still is to have super high ticket products or services, right? Something where it doesn't matter that the costs are rising, you're still going to make it work. And B, super sticky 3-year plus subscription products with short payback periods. And I'll get into this in a bit. Why do these models work? They work because their inherently higher LTV allows for the absorption of more expensive customer acquisition costs. This advantage facilitates profitability from the get-go, right? So if you have a high ticket product or service, the payback is on day one and you have a big margin so that you can reinvest into growth. If you have a super sticky subscription product, same thing, right? The payback has to be short though. I'll dive into a bit, but let's look at how this affects your growth as a business, right? If you have a low LTV business, right? Let's say we're dealing with that e-com brand that's doing $1 million a month, but 20% net margins, even smaller net margin, and you're selling it one time. What happens is you get stuck in the business. The business owner gets stuck in the business because you have low LTV. You don't have much room to work with. If you have low LTV, it means you do not have the margins to reinvest and to hire, right? You can think of it as a flywheel. So if you have low margins, then what happens is you can't invest into growth, you can't invest into talent, right? Which means you can't produce a better product or service, right? It can't improve because you don't have the margin, which means it will keep you stuck in the business because you don't have capital as leverage. Without the margins, all you can do is just work harder. And then your revenue, will stay the same or grow, but the margins are bad. Whereas if we look at this flywheel, if you have the margins to reinvest into hire, then you can hire A players. And A players make a huge difference in your business, right? People talk about A players all the time, but how many people actually have A players? Like, not many, right? And to have A players on your team, you need to overpay the shit out of them because that's what motivates them. First of all, you need to pay them a lot, and second of all, A players can run laps around your C players and B players, right? When you have more margins, better margins, you have a better business, you can hire better people to build better products and services, and then that means you have more free time as a business owner, and you've also built real enterprise value, right? If you're stuck in the business, you can't sell that. You can't sell a business where you come with it. Enterprise value is built by removing yourself and building a machine, right? So you can remove yourself as the business owner to do whatever you want and to focus on the things that you're good at, and that will drive revenue growth and it'll drive more profitability, and then that's the flywheel of success. So that being said, let's take a look at companies with little to no payback. So with that being said, let's take a look at some examples of what are some bad companies and then what are some good companies. These are some companies with little to no payback period, and they're ideally positioned for fast growth and industry dominance, right? So our client, they were selling a high ticket service in the alternative investment space. They were selling an investment product, right, for 30 to 200K, and their CPA was under 10K, right? And so we were able to scale them up to 2 million a month in under 2 years because payback was on first purchase, meaning the first time, because when someone bought, right, they got the payback immediately, and they had extra room to reinvest into growth, and they had recurring revenue on the back end. So what did they have? They had compounding monthly recurring revenue. I'm gonna say that again. They had compounding monthly recurring revenue. That is what you really want, right? You want a back end that's growing, but it's also compounding. How? Because the way that it works for them, they had profit splits on the back end. So that means not only are they adding more customers, MRR every month, but the MRR of each existing customer is also growing. And so instead of you having a linear curve that looks like this, revenue growth, it's looking like that. And by the way, if you look at Facebook and Google's model, that's how they built it too, right? As advertisers are more successful, they spend more. So not only are they getting more customers, but each customer that they have is spending more with them. And that's how you build an extremely valuable business. Number 2 is Plunge. I'm sure you guys have heard of Plunge before, and they're an ice bath company. I'll talk about why this model works. Like, what is it about Plunge that works? Let me tell you, it's not about the cold plunge tub, right? They figured something out, which I'll tell you about later in this video, which is super crucial for building a bigger business. So if you look at their stuff, super high ticket, right? This is 5K, this is 7K, this is 9K, right? So high ticket, payback on first purchase, right? If someone's buying this outright, payback is on first purchase, and they have financing options too, but still super profitable. Why? Because according to, so I was listening to a podcast, and apparently, their CPA was $300. So they were paying $300 on Google search or, whatever platform they were running. I think YouTube, and I think it was just search actually. They were paying $300 to acquire a customer, and they had a 5 to 9K range. So that's extremely profitable on the front end, right? Most e-com businesses can't even afford a CPA of 300. They need to be like in the $15 range or less. Otherwise, they're unprofitable. But here, even if they had to pay 400, 500 bucks, it'd still be profitable, right? Because they still have this huge margin. So payback on first purchase. So again, this trend here of payback on first purchase, now they have lots of margin. They can reinvest into growth. They can reinvest into product. They can reinvest into team members, right? And then this company will grow. These guys are now a 9-figure company, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're valued in the hundreds of millions, potentially even billions of dollars, because they grossed over $100 million in revenue last year. AG1 is another example of high LTV, but achieved through subscription, right? So they're valued at $1 billion, and they have raving fans, and essentially they've integrated their product to become a daily essential, with some users using it for more than 3 years, right? I've seen some of their testimonials of like they've been using it for more than 3 years. And so you can imagine the LTV on this as being super long. You can imagine the LTV of this being very good. And they're not cheap, they're like decently expensive, which means that they can either break even on acquiring the customer, or even if they take a loss, right? They have the customer for 3 years, so they have a short payback period. I'm assuming no more than 3 months, which is very good. So let's say they acquire a customer, it takes them 3 months to break even, but they have a customer for 3 years. They can make that work, and it's very profitable. So let's take a look at some companies that have weak / non-existent unit economics with long payback periods, who need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially even billions of dollars, to become profitable, and often mask their lack of strong fundamentals with VC capital, right? So I think of VC capital as this sort of cancer, because if you have it, you can continue to make something that's not working pretend to be working, because you can just keep throwing dollars at it, right? Whereas if you're bootstrapped, the market will tell you, hey, I don't really want this, and you're just gonna fail, right? And that's a much stronger feedback signal than having unlimited amounts of money that you can throw at a project that nobody wants. WeWork, everyone's heard of WeWork, right? WeWork was valued at $47 billion, but its valuation plummeted after the failed IPO, and also it was never profitable. Quibi, this was like some sort of short form streaming service. It raised $1.75 billion, shut down after less than a year due to lack of subscribers and profitability, right? I've seen some businesses that made like $500K annual revenue and was valued at $1 billion, like some crazy shit like that. Legible, I personally spoke to this company, and it's funny because I was introed to this company through like a venture studio, and they're like, we could use your help on this, and they're like, we only bet on winning horses. This is word for word what the guy said, right? He's like, we only bet on winning horses. So I hopped on a call with this Legible team. They're publicly traded. They went public pre-revenue. They're in the ebook and audiobook space, so they're competing with like Kindle and Audible, which was like a terrible idea. They had less than 10K in annual revenue. This was a publicly traded company with less than 10K in annual revenue. So what is a good payback period, right? So I got this from Lenny's newsletter. Lenny is a guy who, I think he did growth at Airbnb, but he has this great podcast, great newsletter. You should check it out. And he talks about what are some good payback periods, right? You can see that in the B2C space, they have sometimes 12-month payback periods, 6-month payback period, 1-month payback period. Obviously, we're aiming for on first purchase. This is what every company should aim for. Otherwise, if you go for great, good, or okay, yes, it can work, but it's likely that you'll need VC funding. It's likely that you will be slower at growing without VC funding, right? So if you have VC funding, you can afford to do this 12-month and you can grow. But if you don't, then I suggest you do on first purchase, or if you can, get it down to 1 month. B2B, same, like this is what it is. And for enterprise, this is what it looks like. So that's just to give you an idea of the first step. You need solid unit economics, right? Too many businesses don't have this. In fact, most small businesses, this is where they go wrong. And that's why I put it as step 1, is they don't understand unit economics. The reason why restaurants are shit businesses is because their unit economics suck, right? They're in a hyper competitive space. They're making almost nothing, right? Their margins are super slim and they're unable to scale. And so you're just stuck. That's why so many restaurant owners work within the business, right? They're like, this is like your classic local bakery, classic local restaurant. They can't escape the restaurant grind because they don't have enough money to be able to remove themselves. And they can't charge more because they don't offer differentiated product or service. Which brings me to my second point, understanding the importance of trends. right? So how do we build a massive business? If you look at Peter Thiel, he has a great talk about how to build a monopoly. And the 4 things that he talks about are: 1, having a proprietary technology that's basically 10x better, order of magnitude better than the market standard, right? And so that proprietary tech. Restaurants do not have that. You cannot build something proprietary because at the end of the day, you're selling food. Number 2 is economies of scale. Number 3 is network effects. Number 4 is brand, right? You can see now too, when we're talking about brand, a lot of these small business owners in the online space, right, that are essentially selling commodities are finding ways to build brands because that's the only way they can stand out. That's the only chance they have at securing some type of differentiation is through their brand, because at the core they are different than the next person, right? And so brand is a vehicle that allows you to show that, because you have these big gurus in the space like Eman Gadji, who are pumping agency owners in the space, other gurus pumping drop shippers or whatever into the space, and it's super hard to differentiate yourself because you're essentially becoming commodities. Everyone's selling the same thing, and the only way to differentiate your finding is to build brands. But if you want to differentiate, you can also do those other 3 things that I talked about. But step 2, right, is understanding the importance of trends. This is super, super important. This is how all those big businesses that I mentioned here are built on, right? I'm going to talk about this. Step 2 is understanding the importance of trend. I cannot stress this enough. You need to understand this, okay? But hear me out. Just listen to this, right? So the most successful businesses aren't those that enter a market with a superior product to their competition, but those that create products and services that didn't exist before them, okay? They don't change markets as much as they make them. So when you think about Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, they're creating markets, right? They're creating products and services that didn't exist before. They're not coming in and creating a better product. They're creating something that didn't even exist. So one obvious advantage to this type of business is that it faces minimal competition, and because no one else has established themselves in this space, it allows them to build a monopoly, right? Once established, these positions are challenging to upset. But so that makes sense, right? In order to build a really big business, you need to kind of invent a category. And once you invent a category, and if you establish yourself as a player, then it's very hard to disrupt. But the challenge is that, if you invent a new category, you might not have demand for it, and you have to create demand for it, right? You have to generate demand for it. This is where most startups go wrong, right? 42% of startups fail because there's no market for their product, right? They don't have product market fit. So all these companies are starting new things, they're building new products, but then 42% of them fail because there's no product market fit. This is the leading reason why startups fail. It's not any of these other things, it's just because there's no market for it. So this is why trends are extremely important. Trends, not fads, right? We're not talking about fads. Fads is like a fidget spinner. That trends, not fads, by the way. When people think of trends, they think about something short term. No, trends are an emerging phenomenon, while fads are like they go up and then they go down, right? Like a fidget spinner. They represent a unique phenomenon in business where the best of both worlds collide. So why are trends important? Because trends is a signal of interest, which is demand that didn't exist beforehand. So why are trends important? Trends are important because they signal an interest. And what is an interest? It is demand, right? So trends are essentially demand that you didn't have to generate. Think about how powerful that is, right? When you're building a product, when you're building a business, a lot of people try to do what's called demand gen, right? They're like, I need to create demand for my product and service. But what if there was already demand in the market and all you had to do was capture it by providing something? This is why trends are so important, right? And then you add tactics of demand gen on top of that, and you have an exploding business, something that can grow extremely fast. Does that make sense? So you're basically in this unique situation where demand for a product or service arises before monopolies are formed, right? So the only way to build these massive businesses is to build them on the back of trends. If you think about AG1 and Plunge, going back to those companies, they're built on trends, right? They're built on the back of emerging trends like cold plunging, right? On gut microbiome stuff, which are exploding trends that are popularized by this guy named Andrew Huberman, right? And so how do we actually find trends? How do you actually build businesses on the back of trends? Well, there's this company called explodingtopics.com. right? Where you can track these trends, and you can see like some of these trends are still here, the ones I'm talking about. Let's see if I can find some. So mushrooms everywhere. This is a trend that you've probably seen, like Mudwater. That's another huge brand that's built off of this mushroom trend, right? Sleep tech. This is another huge trend. So 8 Sleep. That's a company built off of that sleep trend, which is also a huge company. So cold exposure products. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like we can look at this trend, and there is a huge trend on, see, videos tagged cold plunge reached over 1.6 billion views on TikTok alone. And so all of these products are emerging from this trend. Portable ice bath, cold plunge tub, right? Red light therapy. These are all things that are riding this trend, which is demand that is being captured. If you're building the 100th, clothing brand, nobody gives a shit, right? These companies are the ones that are actually winning, because a really good way to think about it is, CPMs, right? CPMs quantify the value of the offer that you're providing to the market. If you pump your offer out there and your CPMs are high as shit, that means that not only are you going to be not profitable, but it also means that the market doesn't want what you're providing, because there's so many other people selling the same shit that nobody wants. If you're selling something that's trending upwards, like ice baths, right? These guys are probably getting good CPMs and good CPAs, right? Looking at plunges, CPA is only $300. Another thing is because there's just demand for it, right? There's so much content that's being put on the web, on TikTok, on YouTube, of people talking about the benefits of cold exposure. And so they want this product already. People already want this product. All you have to do is create a solution that captures this demand, right? So this is why trends are extremely, extremely important. You need to understand how to incorporate these trends into your business. So does this mean if you don't have a trending business, you won't be able to win? Absolutely not, right? I mean, obviously, the best way is to build a business off of a trend, right? So you can see this global cold plunge pool markets is, rose by, it's going to continue to rise, right? So we're still kind of early if you want to capture this, but you understand the point, right? The point is, get on a trend and get on it early by using a tool like this and implement it into your business, whether you're e-com, whether you're SaaS, or whatever. Now you see all these SaaS companies that are riding the AI wave, and they're all getting funded, even if they're garbage, right? Because they're riding a trend. Nobody wants the 100th calendar company, right? They're all building AI. So the tricky part is obviously to recognize it early enough, but like I said, you can buy tools like Exploding Topics. It's a couple $100 a year, but it's worth it. I mean, if you can build a big company off of it, why not? And the other thing is, you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be the next cold plunge company. There are all these other trends that are happening that you can integrate into your field. So if you're in the wellness space, focus on these things, right? If you're in technology, focus on these things. If you run an agency or if you run a service-based business, you can integrate AI. AI is probably the biggest trend of the next decade or so, right? There's so many opportunities to integrate AI into your business. You can become an AI leveraged agency, an AI powered service-based business, right? So there are all these other things that you can incorporate. Find a trend, right? That equals demand, integrate it into your business so that people will want what you actually offer. That is how you differentiate yourself. So this is a graph that shows essentially, what a fad is versus a trend. A trend is something that will go up and continue to go up over time. A fad is like this, fidget spinner, right? So step 3, so those are the first 2 steps. If you have those, that's the 80-20 in action of business growth, right? You need a desirable product that taps into an emerging trend, and then you need to make sure that you can actually grow profitably. It doesn't matter if you have a trending product if it's not profitable. So those are steps 1 and 2. Number 3 is to build a growth engine, something that will allow you to consistently grow your business. It's not enough to have this product. You still need to market it, right? Even though it'll be easier to market it, but it doesn't mean that you'll just naturally have customers flooding at your door. You still need to create a system that will actually allow you to grow consistently and profitably, right? So this is also really important. Many companies falter by missing one of these elements, right? Resulting in either outright failure or at best moderate success. Without reaching valuation in the tens of hundreds of millions, success hinges on nailing numerous small details, not finding a mythical silver bullet solution that the market overhypes, right? You always see this. People are like, there's just one funnel, one product, you're one process away. That's all BS, right? There's no one silver bullet that will magically elevate your business. You need a broad and deep understanding of many aspects of things. Like Alex Ramosi says, no silver bullet, thousands of golden BBs. And that's a really good way of distilling it. The only thing separating you from the desired place is the knowledge and the execution of that knowledge. You have to understand that ignorance is a risk factor, right? The greater the ignorance, meaning the more you don't know, the more unknowns are in your business, which means the higher the risk there is in your business, which means the more luck you need. And that is not how you build a valuable enterprise. Valuable enterprises are built on risk mitigation. The most valuable enterprises are the most riskless enterprises, right? What is the value of a company? The value of a company is its future cash flows discounted to the present value. And if your future cash flows are extremely risky, right, you don't know where your next dollar is going to come from, then you don't have much enterprise value. But if you know how you're going to get your next dollar, then you have a valuable enterprise. And the way that you do that is by reducing luck, reducing risk, reducing the number of unknowns systematically, right? So luck is equal to risk, which is equal to the unknown. Got this from David Friedberg. He has a great talk about this. The more you don't know, the more risky your business is, and the more luck you need. But if you knew everything already, then you wouldn't need luck. There would be no risk. So when it comes to growth, we've spent our entire careers solving for it, and we know how to grow businesses to multiple eight figures. So we know the small steps that you need to do in order to grow a business, right? Or in order to create a growth engine, right? Like I said, it's not enough to have sustainable unit economics and a trending product. Most businesses don't even get those two right. But if you somehow do, then you have the third step of you need to be able to create a growth engine, right? Which is not easy to do. But I'll show you the exact steps you need, the thousands of tiny golden BBs that you need to get right in order to build a sustainable growth engine. So what is a growth engine? It's a systematic and scalable framework or set of strategies designed to drive business growth. It involves a combination of processes, tools, you can read this. Basically, you can think of a growth engine as a system that puts $1 in, throws out $10, $20, and it's consistent and it's predictable, right? When you have a growth engine, here's how you know you have a growth engine. You have peace of mind, right? The growth engine allows you to get leads and sales on demand and make growth profitable and predictable. If your revenue is kind of like a roller coaster, or it's unpredictable and unsustainable, that means you don't have a growth engine. You haven't figured out customer acquisition. Clarity: if you have a growth engine, you understand why things are working or not working, and where or how you can address those problems instead of being too overwhelmed, right? With all the tactics and strategies you feel like you need to do. This is a huge problem I see in most business owners. They think that when it comes to marketing, that there are unlimited tactics, right? Because everybody's trying to sell you their one strategy, their one tactic that helped them make $1 bajillion. But that's all noise, right? Everybody has their own incentives. They're trying to sell you. But the reality is there's only a finite set of things that actually work. And I'm going to break down what those things are. You have profitability. You have a machine that actually turns $1 into 3, 5, or even 10 plus, right? Going back to that e-com example, you don't want a machine where you're spending $1 just to make 2. Even if you're making $1 million a month, that's not a very efficient machine, or it's not a very attractive machine, right? You're able to grow faster, more predictably. If you want to grow faster, you're just a machine where you just pull a lever and grow. So how do you build a growth engine? There are 5 key pillars, and I'm going to talk about all of these so that you can understand exactly, like I said, the golden BB steps that you need in order to grow a business, right? Growth fundamentals: acquisition strategy, sales assets, acquisition channels, learning and iterating. This is all you need. You don't need any other gurus to tell you anything else. These are the only 5 things you need. Number 1, growth fundamentals. This kind of goes back to steps 1 and 2, where we're talking about trends and unit economics. But what does this look like? It means, what is our product and offer? How do we do market research? What is our competitor analysis research? What is our value prop? What is our messaging? How do we brand? What is our revenue and pricing models? Like, the most important 2 things here: product and offer, revenue and pricing models. Number 2, once you figured that out, this is very hard, by the way, right? Most people, if you get this wrong, you will have a shitty business. Okay, it's that simple. You will have a very tough time trying to grow. You will have a very tough time trying to get new customers. But if you get this right, the rest of it is smooth sailing. Pillar 2 is acquisition strategy. How do we acquire customers? Once you figure out what to sell, Number two is, how do we acquire customers? Well, we have to look, are you a product-led growth company or are you a channel-led growth company? What is the difference? Product-led growth company is a company that grows through its product. Something like ChatGPT, right? Where you're not really trying to sell it, it kind of sells itself. Or are you a channel-led growth company? These are things that sell through channels. Channels like paid ads, channels like direct sales, right? Direct outreach, cold outbound, content, right? And so we have these four categories: paid, content, viral, and sales. And within these categories, there's channels, right? Under paid, you have Google, Facebook, Amazon ads, Twitter ads, all these other paid ad channels. On content, you have, you can make content on YouTube, Instagram, and all these other things. Viral, there's a few channels of virality. Mainly it's just word of mouth and content as well. And then direct outreach sales, right? Sales, these are all categories, and then underneath them are channels. So in direct sales, we have a few channels. We have cold outbound, we have account-based selling. So once you categorize which ones to use, you have to evaluate the channels for your business. If you want a channel evaluation sheet, comment sheet below, and I'll send you what we use internally at AdMisfits to evaluate channels. Number three are sales assets. So we need assets that allow us to test and learn from a market. It all comes back to the luck equals risk equals unknown equation. Your sales assets are like a lab. They're used to gauge the market and are meant to be updated and iterated to get more information about it, right? So we need to put something up there. We need to see how the market interacts with it. And then we need to change our sales assets to be able to get more people to buy our services and products. For e-com, it's your landing page and your website, right? All the traffic will be driven here. Your socials can even act as a sales asset. Onboarding flows for SaaS, right? How do we get someone to experience our core product value as quickly as possible? This is what SaaS onboarding is all about. Have them hit a landing page and then get onboarded into your product and then experience core product value as soon as possible. Service-based businesses are lead magnets, right? You have to create lead magnets, which are complete solutions to a narrow problem. And you should know what the problems of your market are in order to create this. And then you need conversion tracking, right? What is conversion tracking? At its core, it's this principle, which is what you can't observe, you can't control. If you can't observe, what's going on, you can't control it. So if we want to influence the behavior of our customers, we need to be able to track it. Ad creatives, right? It's another sales asset. Emails and marketing automation. Those are sales assets, right? And I'm just going over these things at a high level because obviously these things are its own thing on its own, but you need to know at a high level what you need to focus on. Number four is acquisition channels, right? These are all the channels that you can use to get scalable traffic. For 90% of businesses, you're gonna fall into Meta, right? Facebook, Instagram, Google, and YouTube. Those are the three, biggest ones. That's why they're the biggest advertising platforms, is because they work for like 90% of businesses. Like very few businesses are running Pinterest ads, Amazon ads. Pinterest ads, Bing ads, or Twitter ads. You have to be a pretty big company to be doing these things because you want to concentrate your budget into the ones that are going to work best for you. Number five is learning and iterating. So after we built a system that's driving traffic to a landing page, it's converting people into our product or service, then pillar five is learning and iterating, right? This is why you see so many big brands investing into CRO nowadays, because it is the process by which you make that funnel more efficient, right? Where you turn your $1 into $3 or $4 more by making optimizations. So these are things like, CRO, A/B tests, screen recordings, heat maps, user surveys, qualitative and quantitative data. So these things, like I said, are all super big things on its own. If you want me to break down each of these things further, drop a comment below and tell me which ones you want to learn more about, and I can make some more videos on it. But yeah, this is essentially how you build a growth engine. So if you want to scale to 8 figures, I want you to book a call with my team. There's going to be a link in the description where you can call and chat with us about your business and see if we're able to help you out with any of these things. Like I said, this is exactly how you make $8 million or a couple $1 million, right? So I've showed you everything you need to know. I hope this makes sense. And if you get those 2 things right, then I encourage you to come to us for step 3, because the more you don't know, the more risk that's involved. So it's better to have someone that already knows everything and is doing this to help you speed up that process. With that being said, hope you got some value out of this video. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.